Section 11 of Shadowland, September 1919. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Stunning. Shadowland, September 1919. By Various. The Playwright's Opportunity. The Playwright's Opportunity by Lee Schubert. Mr. Lee Schubert is one of the representative men of the American theater. Consequently, his comments upon the opportunities for the native playwright carry unusual significance. Are you writing a play? Then read Mr. Schubert's article. If you're not, but then you are. Everybody is. Not a great many years ago, American managers were accused of favoring European playwrights. During the war, the supply of plays from England, France, and Italy greatly decreased, and as for Austria, Germany, and Russia, these sources were altogether cut off. Now that we are enjoying peace days again, the question naturally arises as to whether we may continue to look to Europe for the bulk of plays to be produced here in the next season or two. For the benefit of those who have written for the American theater, and the hundreds of thousands who cherish the hope of turning out successful plays, let it be recorded that now is the golden opportunity. Never in the history of the theater in this country has the time been so propitious for the playwright with a reputation, or the man or woman with the knowledge of play construction, or for a person with a good story to tell, as it is at present. The demand for plays with merit greatly exceeds the supply. The situation is such that producing managers are inclined to offer special inducements to new writers to enter the field. Which is to say that the "made in America" idea is just as firmly entrenched in the theater with the sincere desire to further the plan, as it is in any other branch of American art or industry. Managers have always encouraged the native playwright and the comparatively small number of successful American writers, for the stage is not so much that producers make it difficult for unknown authors to get their plays read and produced, but rather because so few writers with talent for dramatization have gone in seriously for playwriting. If we do not get the plays to read, we certainly cannot offer them, and when we find ourselves short of plays, we have no alternative but to go into the open markets of Europe. During the war, when the theaters on the continent were for many months at a time practically a dead issue, we imported plays because new playwrights on this side were not developing as quickly as they should have. Paradoxical as it may seem, it is nevertheless true, and despite our efforts to support embryo writers, we find very few willing to take up the profession with the same spirit and enthusiasm necessary for success in any other profession. There are elements of playmaking that are technical, points of writing that are wholly of the theater, and none can acquire this knowledge without making a study of it. Without this fundamental knowledge of the theater, playwriting becomes irksome and means that when a manuscript is submitted by a person who lacks this knowledge, it has to be turned over to a doctor. In this connection, the would-be playwright differs from the student in any other profession, because he is obsessed with the idea that his way is the right one, and nothing can divert him from that opinion. The result is that the manager is accused of being permitted to produce only plays of men and women who have attained some success in the theater, and are therefore without vision, and slaves to conventionalities, and fixed rules of stagecraft. But every manager knows this is not true. At best, the theater is a huge speculation from the time the manuscript is read until the curtain goes up on the first performance. For this reason alone, we can hardly be criticized for trying to minimize its uncertainty as regards the selection of plays. Even the combination of the best authors and the best play readers is far from foolproof in picking plays, and often this experienced partnership goes far astray of public opinion. The fact that a particular author's name may appear more frequently on playbills than that of another, and the further fact that so few new names appear at all, is not because the managers force the one to write for them and discourage the other. Quite the contrary. We welcome one manuscript with as much appreciation and with equally as much optimism as we do another. If anything, rather more hopeful that the new writer will have a promising play than the man with the reputation. While managers do what they can to aid the beginner in the theater, they do not want, nor do they expect a halo for this service, for it is obvious that the more people writing for the stage, the larger our market from which to select. If I am compelled to withdraw a play by a new author, it is with personal regret, not so much because of the financial loss, as it is that for every play by a new writer that fails, we lose perhaps hundreds of other plays by men and women who become disheartened when a newcomer fails. Usually, these writers think the managers are responsible for the success or failure of the play, making it so either by casting or by production. I do not deny that this may happen, but generally speaking, it is not true. They seem to forget that for the manager to produce a play indifferently means that the manager deliberately throws away the cast of the production, and the initial cost is just as great for a failure as for a success. Instead of incubating a feeling of distrust for theatrical managers, if the young writer would look over the roster of successful authors and take a page from their book, they would see that half of the established men and women writers of today were not heard of a half dozen years ago. Everyone must make a beginning. As an illustration, I cite the case of Samuel Shipman. Mr. Shipman has been writing for the stage a great many years, but he was never successful until the day he acquired the necessary technique. This season there are 3 plays of his current on Broadway, and all of them successes. As an example of a modern playwright whose methods might well be followed, I recommend Miss Crothers, who has 2 successes to her credit this season: A Little Journey and 39 East. Both of these plays shortly are to be brought out in book form, and I earnestly recommend to embryo playwrights that they study these plays as diligently as they would a work on the drama. Similarly, they should read the published plays of well-known authors, and it goes without saying that seeing plays is a wonderful schooling. Of all the professions, playwriting is, perhaps, the most lucrative, the most congenial, and in many respects the most independent. Yet there are fewer men and women interested in studying the theater than any other professional pursuit. One successful play will make an author rich, whereas in any other profession it takes years to become established and build up a respectable clientele. Time and again, I have seen men and women step out of obscurity into the limelight, almost overnight, and very often they have done so by means of their first play. The same opportunity is still open. End of section 11.